Pablo was a very mellow guy. I mean, like there's a saying, that tiene dos tetas. Una da mierda y una da leche. Depende a cuál te prendas.
But you had also said you didn't live in Mexico till the 90s. So you're operating things there. You're flying in the planes there. You're helping them build this business even after Rafa goes away. But you were living out of Colombia and Costa Rica primarily.
No, Colombia. No? I never went to Costa Rica because...
You kept it clean totally?
Totally.
Okay, I understand.
Totally. And I knew Costa Rica was very gringo friendly. I didn't want anything to do with Costa Ricans. So I lived in Colombia, would travel on and off to Mexico back and forth because I had businesses with, Doc and Oreo and other Mexican groups. I was also, later on I was working in Cancun a lot by boat.
By boat?
Yeah, we started when planes got hot and it was difficult because of the radar station in Panama. We decided to start sending boatloads to Cancun. That was 1993.
Okay, so that's a while forward. But in the meantime, you had been living in Colombia. Did you deal ever even once directly with Pablo Escobar? Like, did you meet him?
Yes, I met him at Pablo Correa's farm. I was working with Pablo Correa, and...
Who was Pablo Cora?
Pablo Correa was one of the major members of the Medellin cartel, one of the big producers of the Medellin cartel. At one point, he probably had more merchandise in the United States than anybody else. He was probably the largest producer in Medellin. And we were doing routes. We were doing Mexico trips with him, and as well as Bahama trips. This is why my numbers got so big. I was moving so much because I was working Mexico, I was working Central America, and I was working the Bahamas. And each of these trips were 1,000, 1,500 kilos, 1,000. So when you start adding all this up, those thousands of kilos just start building up.
Sure.
And in one of those trips, it was with Doc, as a matter of fact. We landed the plane in Mexico, and they took smaller planes to cross the border, and they threw it in the Arizona desert. And some of the kilos hit some cactus plants. So when they received the kilos in L.A., they had thorns in them. And these guys... They took one of the kilos from LA and brought it back to Medellin, and Pablo Correa called me up and says, come see me. I went to see him at his ranch outside of Medellin where he had a bicycle path. Pablo Correa was always very well-dressed, always in a suit. He had fucking 300 pairs of shoes. I saw his closet and suits. And Pablo came to visit him, and that's where I met Pablo.
Now, how many people are there when you meet him?
Well, Pablo Correa had a few of his people there, and obviously when Pablo came, he had one group come in first. They call it anillos de seguridad, security rings. First one group comes in, checks it out, makes sure everything's good. Then, Pablo comes, and then another stays back to make sure nobody comes in after he does. But that's when, I was sitting in the office with Pablo Correa, and then he gets a phone call, says, tenemos al señor que viene en camino, and it was Pablo.
And this is like 87, 88, something like that?
This was 80, no. This is 88, 89. I was working with Pablo Correa and Paco Burladero. So it was about 89.
Yeah, I remember that guy. Yeah, that guy was a real sweetheart. Paco?
He got his head chopped off. He got too big for his own good, and he decided to retire, and he pissed a lot of people off. A lot of people trusted him. He kept a lot of merchandise, and he had a lot of control over a lot of people's merchandise, and I was transporting for him. But he would there's 500 of your kilos on the strip, and he would send them to Miami. And he would make it, but he wouldn't tell you. And he'd sell it. then come back and replace your kilos. But, that was like free money.
Yeah.
And bad things come back to hurt you. And then people started finding out that he was
on the take.
Yeah, doing things like that, playing around with people's merchandise. Sometimes it was your merchandise that, had a fall, and he would tell you that it was yours instead of yours because he'd rather have a problem with you and not you.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, they just grabbed him. They took all his money. They told him they were going to set him free. He went to the river to wash his face, and the guy that was with him cut his head off.
So he had stored his money, I guess, in a lot of places, so they made him give him access.
Over $100 million back then he had in Europe.
Okay.
And that was 89.
Now back to Escobar, though, because you're meeting him then. If that was like 89 when you were on the farm and met him, he's at the height of his power, basically. Like, that's when he is the guy. Whoa. Were you afraid to meet him?
No.
It was cool. It was just normal meeting another dude.
Yeah.
What was he like?
Very gentlemanlike, very smooth, not hyper. Very, very leveled. Even, he wasn't, a creep or he wasn't crazy. No. Mono Endo was off the wall. He was hyped up. He was like on methamphetamines all the time or something. Pablo was a very mellow guy. Like there's a saying, tiene dos tetas, una da mierda y una da leche. Depende a cuál te prendas.
Something about shit or milk?
Well, he's got two tits. One gives milk and one gives shit.
Yeah.
Depends which one you're going to grab onto.
Right.
They're all like that.
I don't like that you know what he says fully before I know it. This is a little scary.
But would I wake up in the morning and think about dying, getting arrested? No. It was just
Never.
My job. It was what I did, and I wanted to expand my business. I always thought, I always wanted to do freighters, containers. And that was my downfall. And I realized it when I got into it. I told my partner, I said, this is going to be our downfall, the paper trail.
Why is that a downfall as opposed to pickup trucks?
Because, you have a plane and you airdrop and it's a pilot and the guy who's kicking in the back. And that's it. But when you have a freighter company in Piraeus, 10 boats, 10 ships, and you got the good crews and the bad crews, and when you're going to do a coke run, you got to switch the good crew for the bad crew, and there's bills to pay and gas bills, and there's an office and paper trails. I knew it, and I said it. After we do this trip, which that was the last trip, there was no other, my plan was to go back to Europe and start building these 100-foot go-fasts with internal Caterpillar 3-in diesel engines and just put 4 islanders from San Andres or 4 crew members and cross the Atlantic. You don't need a freighter to cross the Atlantic.
Don't?
No. How big do you think Christopher Columbus's boat was?
A lot of those boats didn't make it, though.
But he made it. It was 50 feet long. Christopher Columbus's boat, that Santa Maria and the Pinta and the other one, they were like
Pinta, the Gria, the Santa Maria.
Yeah, it was 50 feet long. They're made out of wood. So you take a super well-built fiberglass. We were going to build them in Brazil. 100-foot open fisherman.
Yeah, that would do it.
With 3 inboard 1,200 horsepower Caterpillar diesel. And those things will run forever. You put 5,000 kilos and you're gone. When it gets to the northern Spain and the Los Gallegos, the fishing boats take off the coke, you sink the boat, and the 4 black guys or the crew members, usually I was going to use islanders because I was going to transit them back to South America via Cape Verde Islands. So, you know. But you sink the boat.
Just let it go.
Yeah, $250,000 boat, $300,000. What's that compared to 5,000 kilos that you just handed over? And when you build them, you build 8, 10 at a time.
You had this all plotted out.
Yep, that was my next move. I was going to get rid of those freighters.
Okay.
But here we are. The U.S. government, Eric Kolbinski, came in and picked up my ass.
Yeah, we skipped so many years again. We got to go back. You keep going forward.
That's already year 2000, Venezuela.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
I was still 88, 89 on Pablo Escobar on that farm.
Yeah.
So that was the last time you saw him, though. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.